Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 7th, 2022 meeting of the Longmeadow Select Board. We will begin with the, I will do my script, sorry. This is Select Board Chair, Josh Levine. I will be confirming that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Gold.
Here.
Dan Zwerko.
Here.
Tom Lacusa.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lynn Simmons.
Here.
Mike Barbieri.
Here.
This open meeting of Longmeadow Select Board is being conducted in person with a remote option available to the public consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. This meeting is convened in person via Zoom webinar as posted on the agenda and town's website identifying how the public may join. There's no chat or Q&A function. All of the materials for this meeting are available on the agenda posted on longmeadow.org. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. This meeting will feature resident comment. For residents attending the meeting in person, please fill out the public comment form given upon arrival at the meeting. I will call on residents in the order in which the forms are received. For residents participating in the meeting via Zoom webinar format, members of the public are attendees. If a member of the public would like to speak during resident comment, please use the raised hand icon at the bottom of the screen. The meeting moderator will promote you to panelist, unmute you, and give you permission to speak. If you join the webinar by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute, unmute. Residents who wish to speak will identify their names and addresses only. Each individual is afforded 3 minutes for comments. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. We will open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, today's announcements. Longmeadow's Fall 2022 Leaf Program. The town of Longmeadow will provide a curbside bagged leaf collection program again this fall. Curbside's collection on the town pay-as-you-throw leaf bags will be held on Saturday, November 5th, Saturday, November 19th, and Saturday, December 3rd. This schedule is subject to change due to weather. Residents who are putting leaf bags out for collection are advised to take them to the curb by 7 a.m. on these Saturday mornings. Longmeadow residents will have 3 options for leaf disposal. Use the town pay-as-you-throw curbside leaf collection program, hire a private leaf contractor for leaf removal, or purchase a recycling center ticket and transport leaves directly to the Meadows Leaf composting site on West Road. For additional information, please visit the Department of Public Works Leaf Program page, and there's a link in the announcements attached to the agenda. Massachusetts state election. Reminder, the state election will take place tomorrow, Tuesday, November 8th, at the Longmeadow Community House. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. All right, first up on the agenda, we have DEI committee interviews. So, pull up the schedule. Mike, how many do we have confirmed for today?
I believe I had 7 confirmed.
Okay. And I don't believe I see 7 out here, but that's okay. All right, so first up, we have Christopher Morris. Okay. Tammy Erb.
What do I need to do?
You can come up and sit at the microphone and state your name and address, street address in town.
Here or here?
Whichever one you'd like.
Okay. I've never been to the high school, sorry.
All right, so please introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Tammy Erb, ERB. I live at 134 Normandy Road in Longmeadow.
Okay, thank you for applying and for meeting with us tonight. Tell us what your interest is in the DEI committee.
I haven't lived here very long. I moved here in July. I've quickly been put on the board of directors of the Longmeadow Pride Alliance. I've been volunteering for different organizations and trying to get involved in town. I feel very welcome here, and that's unusual for my family because we are a transgender family. My child is transgender, and I shake every time I say that in a way, but I really enjoyed meeting the people that I met at Pride. I've gone to some other things in Long Meadow, and I feel I feel like there's a place for me and my family to help other people understand the transgender community. There are a lot of reasons I can think of that I wouldn't be selected to be on this group, on the committee, but there are a lot of reasons that I'd be a good choice. I'm older, I'm a woman, I have a trans kiddo. I am passionate about diversity and equity and inclusion. I was a manager of a very big group when I lived in Manhattan and worked in a big bank. And I had 150 employees, and we were awarded and commented on and complimented over and over for the fact that we were very diverse. And there's sort of an analogy, and this is going back 20, 25 years. I just like people a lot. I think that I'm good at putting different people together. Teaching people that differences aren't so different, accepting everybody. My analogy is for DEI is diversity is you invite a lot of people to a dance. Inclusion is that everybody isn't just sitting in the corner, they're all being encouraged to dance. And equity is you also get to help pick the DJ. There are a lot of people in companies and civic groups and everything where they have a diverse group of people, but everybody isn't being able to participate fully. I experienced that at work. I'm 62 years old. I definitely experienced not really being included at work for a lot of my career when I was working. I managed a huge global department, and I was of a peer of probably 5 men, and they were all paid twice as much as I was paid, and maybe they had 5 people reporting to them or something. So, I may be white and I may be older. A lot of people get to know me and say, I thought you were just going to be a boomer, I know I hang around with a lot of kids who see me as a mom when they've been kicked out of their houses and things like that. And a lot of them think that they say I'm cool. So I wasn't really expecting, to be interviewed like this. I'm getting kind of nervous, but.
Have you read our charge?
Yes.
And do you have any ideas of what you don't have to tell us your ideas, but are you thinking of things that the town can do?
Well, I'm also autistic. I have Asperger's. I'm a little bit blunt sometimes, and I'm not sure if I should be, but it seems very white here to me. When we were first looking for houses here, we kept coming on Fridays because my husband works, and we were coming around, in from the Springfield way, and I was seeing all the stuff about Black Lives Matter and everything else, and that's great. I don't see tons of black people here. That's interesting to me. I don't know if that's, what you're going for. I think that I was just talking to a young man who walked me down the hall here and showed me where to go, and he said they started a group here at the high school last year, to an anti-racism group, and it seems a little late to me, behind the schedule in a way, and maybe I'm being offensive, I hope not, but I'm used to, I lived in Manhattan for a long, long time, so I'm used to being around very, diverse neighborhoods, and the word diverse to me is almost strange to use. I mean, people are people to me, and for a very long time, I've been somebody who I hope is bringing people together. It's been very interesting, and it's been very interesting having a kiddo who is transgender. It's been a lot of our family's experience has been being shunned and losing friends and losing family and different things because people don't understand that this is a normal. It's not common, but it's, there have been transgender people since the dirt. So, it didn't, ruffle our family, and, or at least my husband and I and my child, but we've lost a lot of family, and it's just kind of been an interesting experience to look back and see. We've probably been, treated like a lot of other underrepresented people are, and, I bring I'm a very nice person. I work very hard. I'd love to be a part of, helping you do this here, so.
All right, thank you. Mark?
Thank you for applying also. This DEI committee and effort arose out of our report we got from a Coalition for Racial Justice, and I was wondering if you had a chance to look at their report, and if you did, if there was anything there that particularly, spoke to you about some of the things in our town that need to be addressed.
If I did, it was probably a while back. So no, I don't remember that report.
Is your child in the school system?
No, they're 20. They're living over in Springfield in their first apartment.
Okay.
My child is also very late identified autistic, also has a connective tissue disorder, and I probably missed the transgender part a little bit because I was so focused on their 2016 diagnosis with that and trying to, they have a rare condition, and trying to keep them physically healthy. And one day they told us they couldn't scream loud enough that they were a girl. And that was a pretty big day 4 years ago. Since then, they are more gender fluid, and right now are identifying more as non-binary, which is incredibly interesting to me. And both my husband and I have explored our own, where do we get our gender from? What does that mean? It's sad to me that there's a lot of hate, coming from a lot of, I don't know, half of America probably. We've had a lot of threats in different places we've lived, and it's super nice to be here. It's really nice. We've got signs in our yard, "You are loved," and everybody's welcome, and all that. And we get a lot of comments that are positive and kind. And that's not what's been happening for all these years. So it's really nice to be here.
Good.
And I'd like to kind of make it more that way.
Any questions from the rest of the board? All right, well, thank you very much for speaking with us today. So
Sure.
we don't vote tonight, we take it under consideration, so we may vote at our next meeting, and we're also see how many applicants
Okay.
we get. But
Thank
thank you
you.
very much, we appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, is Dylan McDonald here? Linda Preston. Hi.
Hi, good evening.
So introduce yourself for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Linda Preston, and I live at 27 Ferncroft Street here in Longmeadow.
Okay. And how long have you been in town?
Just over 14 years.
A newcomer.
Same questions to you. What brings you here tonight?
Sure. In a lot of ways, I have been doing diversity work, I would say since I was a child, although we didn't have words for it back then. But without telling my whole life story, a little bit more recently, I have been serving as the president of LARC, the Longmeadow Anti-Racism Coalition. And, I would say it's a small group considering the size of the town of Longmeadow. But really, it's the type of group and the type of work that has come out of so many communities like Longmeadow, where the largest group of people is very white, middle class. It's the type of town that I grew up in. I grew up in Glastonbury. And I spent my whole life witnessing, I was kind of one of those people, not because I'm a person of color, but I was socioeconomically different from most of my peers. And I've witnessed being on the outskirts of the group that's sort of in the majority, in power. And, to see how people are treated when they're not in that in group, it can be very difficult. And so I kind of took it my whole life as something to look for and to represent, the underdog or the person that didn't have a voice. And 14 years ago when I moved here, I moved from the town where I teach. I teach in Summers. I've been there for 24 years. And since I started teaching there, my son was born, and my son is black, and he went to elementary school in Summers where I was teaching, and then he came here, he switched at middle school, and he went to Glenbrook, and he went to LHS, and he comes back once in a while to visit. He's graduated from college this past year, but there are a lot of times when he was in Summers or here going to school that things happened and he didn't even want to talk to me about them. And there are details that I was given about some things his friends filled me in on because he didn't want to tell me directly. When he was 5 years old, the first time he said to me, "Mommy, that's okay, I'll deal with it, I don't want you to get involved." When Dr. King's birthday came when he was 6, so he was in first grade, because he hadn't turned 7 yet. He came home with the N-word because someone had called him one. And so I feel fortunate in a way that it was something that I was kind of preparing for my whole life, looking at different things, because I grew up in an environment, my family and other people, my extended family, in my greater community. Racism wasn't a word they used, it was just normal to them. There were words thrown around at holiday parties, at whatever kind of gathering, and I grew up knowing that they were always wrong and hearing people use them casually with disregard for the people that they were talking about. And, I've spent my entire life trying to, when you're little, you can't really stand up when you're 8 years old and say, "Hey, you shouldn't use that word, and that's not kind." And once I got older and I had a voice, I decided I was going to stand up for the people. And as a teacher in Summers, I've been there, like I said, 24 years, and I taught elementary school for 20 years. A lot of my old kids are now my high school students. And I'm one of those teachers that they feel safe coming to, whether that's because they're students of color, whether they're trans or non-binary, whether they are socioeconomically, or if they've had family violence. In my career changes, I've done a lot of teaching, about 30 years of teaching. I went to law school in the 90s and worked in a criminal court, and I did domestic violence advocacy work. And so kids know that I've had all sorts of experiences, personal and professional, and my whole life, really, I've worked to be an advocate for people who don't have a voice. So when I see that kids come in, presumably I'm sorry, environmentalists, but to get a bottle of water, we do have a fountain. We have great water in summers, but they will come in to make that connection, to just know that they can talk to me and feel safe and know that I'm there to advocate. And, you know, there have been incidents in our town, in other towns as well. I'm not trying to throw my town where I teach under the bus, but, you know, it's public knowledge that some things have happened, and a lot of people feel unsafe, and they need to know who can I go to? Who can I really talk to? Who's going to take me seriously? Who's going to listen to me? Who's going to do something? And so every single time we have DEI work being done, any committee, any group, and we've had them that involve students or just faculty, I'm always there. The joke is I'm probably the first one to sign up. And when we start the work, usually one of the first meetings, the person facilitating will say, well, you know, this is a tough conversation. And I said, for me, the only tough thing is, why aren't we having more of these conversations? Why aren't more people? And for me, in a town like Longmeadow, I think it's because most people, well-meaning, kind, good people, I mean, they can wear those labels all day long, but a lot of equity and diversity issues, they're called that because that's not how they see their life. They don't see it as affecting them directly. So it's not, I'm not blaming people, but they can go through their day and not be affected by racism, by, you know, they're heteronormative, and that's how their perspective fits how they can get through their day. You know, if you ever look at surveys that talk about, you know, can a teacher pronounce your name without having to ask you for help? You know, there are all these surveys. Can you walk into a store and find hair care products that work for your type of hair? All these different questions. I think someone developed it like 40 years ago, and it's probably 30 or 40 questions. And most white middle America people can answer yes to most or all of the questions. And a lot of people who say, oh, I always have to tell the teacher how to say my name. You know, but they're the one kid that has to always say and pronounce their name, but the white kids don't have to. Everyone knows the name John and Mary. So I just really want to be an advocate for people, because all of my education, all of my experience is nothing if I just carry it around by myself. And finding another group of people who want to really do something, and to not for us to just spin our wheels and talk and sort of share our experiences, but to really go out into the community, to gather more voices and to highlight those voices. So on LARC, one of the things I try to do, I mean, we don't have a huge presence, but we do have a presence, and we just try to emphasize and to highlight other people who aren't maybe necessarily seen. And I'll, you know, say, you know, did you know that there's this local store and it's owned by a person of color, for example? And, you know, a lot of times people don't know what's nearby. They think of Longmeadow as our community, but we have neighbors as well. And, you know, having that small line drawn around us is, you know, a bit of a bubble.
Do you think with your LARC duties, you'll have time to do the DEI task force as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it would absolutely dovetail with what I already do. Just, and partly the size of our group, we can only really meet once a month. And so a lot of the other work happens sort of between meetings, and that would really, there wouldn't be any kind of conflict with that. And it would really be a smooth overlap. Sure.
Okay. Anything else from the rest of the board? Mark?
Yeah. Thank you, Linda, for applying. I just wanted to comment that this, I keep going back to our Coalition for Racial Justice report, and one of the things that it spoke to that we were hoping that the DEI group will help us address is the equity in racial diversity within our town employees. Have you had any experience with anything that might help our town address recruitment or hiring for potential, you know, diverse groups?
You know, in all the groups that I've been on, I mean, I was also not facilitating, so I didn't necessarily have the power to make these decisions. But one of the questions that gets asked is, why aren't people applying? It's not that there aren't qualified people out there, but why is it they're not choosing to try to work here? And a lot of times that has to do with perception of the town and how they'll be received. And very often I think, well, sometimes I really, really wish, the next time, because there's a shortage of people in a lot of professions, teaching profession just being one of them. And if we were to hire, say, a teacher of color, sometimes I think, I really hope it's not just one, because that person could then become this sort of, token, and everyone looks at them to be, and I've been on many groups where one person of color then gets asked by everyone else to sort of school them in, well, what do the, whatever the person's background is, what do your people think about this? And, that person gets hired to do their job, but then they also have this sort of unspoken, task ahead of them. And I think a lot of people, and I'm certainly not trying to speak for anyone, but I've seen this happen, where then they kind of have this extra load put on them. And I think that's a tough barrier to cross. It needs to, happen at some point. But, there are certainly barriers there. And I think that they need to be asking tough questions and being willing. One of the first things I do when I go into my classroom, when I go into a group like this, is I hang my ego at the door. It's not about me. I don't ever feel like, why am I being blamed for the, sins of my forefathers? It's not ever my concern. If it looks like, hey, the people in this town are doing X, Y, Z, and that's why people don't want to apply, I want to help get to the bottom of that, so that we can't solve a problem unless we can identify it. So I think that that's, one of the big things that needs to happen from this group.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, Linda,
Oh, sure.
you're describing, in group work, they call that the Noah's Ark principle, that you really want at least two of everybody, so a person doesn't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for mentioning that.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Saul?
Saul Feinstone, 471 Frank Smith Road. And in the beginning of, early part of 23, I will have lived in that house for 60 years. I love Long Meadow, and I hope that this committee that we form will help to make other people, all the people, love Long Meadow as much as I do. And that's the beauty of this group that we're beginning to form. And I hope I'm part of it. I'm going to begin my story. I know you want me to tell why I want to be on the committee, by telling you about a pledge that I made to myself in 20. And shortly after the George Floyd incident. And you may have heard it. I said it on public television in Long Meadow, and when I made my remarks at the NCCJ, National Committee for Community and Justice, used to be National Committee for Christians and Jews, but obviously there are more than Christians and Jews that are in favor of community and justice. And I made this statement to them, and it was on television, not on television, I'm sorry, on computer, so you may have seen it. But if you haven't, you're going to hear it for the first time today. I pledge to myself that I will be the most anti-racist, the best I could possibly be, and I only regret that I didn't start earlier in life. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of reading, which I've done, and I brought just 3 books that I want to show you, but I will show it to you later, which encapsulated probably why I made this pledge. Now, you know I am also a member of LARC, and I was a founder of LARC, and one of very few people who founded it, who formed it. It began with the Longmeadow Democratic Town Committee having a standout at our favorite corner as people enter Longmeadow from Springfield. We had, it was a Black Lives Matter protest to the George Floyd killing. And we filled 4 corners, unlike what you see today, but with the numbers of people. But it was only a one-shot deal because that was a political year, and the Longmeadow Democratic Town Committee had to devote efforts to get good Democrats elected. So a small group of us, I being one of them, decided to meet because we wanted to continue these standouts. And we were meeting every Monday to plan for the Friday standout, and at about 3 or 4 meetings into it, we found out that we were anti-racist more than just Black Lives Matter, and we formed the Longmeadow Anti-Racist Coalition, LOC. As we met weekly, then we met bi-monthly, twice a month, and now we're meeting once a month, as Linda said. But I probably went to every single one of those meetings, no matter how often we met. I can't recall not meeting. And as far as the standouts are concerned, I probably missed 1 or 2 or 3 in all the 3 years that we've been doing it. Because now I will show you the book that got me started on this journey. The buzz at the beginning of the LOC meetings, there was a lot of talk about white fragility. White fragility. What's that all about? So I got a book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, by Robin DiAngelo. She's a white social worker, but most of the books I read are by black authors. And that's a quality that people have to learn, the white community, that they ought to read more about what black people are saying about the history of racism and other matters of justice. And I read a lot of books. I only brought 3 little ones. I've read thick ones. 1619. You probably heard about that. I don't even remember the author who put that together. Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. Monty Perry's Travel to the, well, that's not the title, something about, South in America, and more, many more. And I learned a lot. And until I began to, when I read White Fragility, the first book in this journey that led me to become what I call anti-racist, well, it's not my saying, it's the next book that I'm going to show you. I had to read it over again. This is my first experience learning about the intricacies of what racism involves. It's not just saying, I'm not a racist. If you ask me, are you a racist? And if Ibram X. Kendi, I read 3 of his books, but the book that How to Be an Anti-Racist explains it clearly. If you ask someone, are you a racist? No is not the answer. It's not just no, I am not a racist. You have to be an anti-racist. Because in White Fragility, why is it so hard for white people to talk about racism? I'm showing you the passion that I have on it. That's basically. So I read 3 of his books, and one of them was a thick book, Planted from the Beginning. Planted in the beginning. Congress people were saying, one is quoted in the book, and I forget who it is, a famous person in the past, dealing with slavery. They were planted from the beginning that they were inferior. So there's a long history. Ammonium. And the third book I haven't read yet, and I can't wait to read it. It intrigued me. It's written by a black woman who was the only person in her class as she was being educated in Suffolk, I think it was Suffolk, on Long Island. And the book is Insurrection, Rebellion, Civil Rights, and the Paradoxical State of Black Citizenship. The author is Hawa Allen. And I have come from a community when I was growing up, and I lived a long period of my life in Boston, and I could tell you stories, but I'm not going to do it now, of the attitude that my community, white people, mostly of Jewish community that I lived in, that if they still harbor those feelings, they're not living in this society. And unfortunately, there are people that still have. So I think I can bring to this committee not only the passion, but the amount of experience and the amount of learning that I've had throughout my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Saul. Any questions from the board? I think we all expected to see your name on the interview list
Thank
when
you.
we came up with the
I
charge.
keep coming back. I don't know. And I enjoy coming back. And I hear better now because I have a new hearing aid.
Excellent.
I
Thank you,
heard
sir.
everything, almost everything. Thank you.
Next on our list, we have Anne Marie Martinez.
That's almost entirely unfair, and that's a tough act to follow. My goodness. Anne Marie Martinez, 133 Pleasant View Avenue. So I think I will give you a little bit of a kind of backstory to just add to the tapestry of why I'm here. So I am a New Englander, about almost 2 years into my stay here at Long Meadow. I am a transplant from New York City. I come to answer the healthcare call. I was pursuing a criminal justice degree while simultaneously working at the public health system in New York City in the infancy of my career. And I was working in a hospital in New York, where if you went 4 blocks north, you were in what was known as Spanish Harlem. And if you went 4 blocks the other way, you were in a neighborhood known as the Upper East Side. So, kind of polar opposites from a socioeconomic standpoint. So the hospital actually had 2 distinct entrances for 2 different patient cohorts. And I remember in the infancy of my career thinking, my goodness, this is inherently wrong. And just to kind of put it into perspective, when you come from an immigrant family, they either want you to be a doctor or a lawyer, to which I have disappointed them both because I am neither. And so I was pursuing criminal justice, and I remember thinking, my goodness, when you're sick, you just have this desire to be inherently better. It didn't matter what walk of life you came from. So I knew in my infancy that that was wrong, and so I kind of changed the trajectory of my career, and I said, I'm going to fix healthcare. I think I knew enough to understand that healthcare was going to be largely complicated and heavily regulated, so I think that the law background, or the undergraduate degree in law was probably a good foundation. I then pursued a master's in public health from NYU, and that was the trajectory of my career. So I think, like you, Linda, although healthcare was my backdrop, I think there was always this public advocacy at my core. Add to that I have always been what I affectionately call a brown girl dreaming. So you add that all. When the healthcare environment in Western Massachusetts called, as a single mother of 3, I said, well, it is prime time to leave the concrete jungles of New York City and come up to Massachusetts. Education has always been at the forefront of not only my agenda, but certainly is the agenda that I pursue for my kids. And so when I did the old research at niche.com, I said, what is the best public school system in Western Massachusetts? Because, of course, at this point, I was doing private school for 3 kids and short of selling my kidneys to afford. And so, of course, Long Meadow. And I said, well, I won't take the job if I can't get them into Long Meadow schools. And so here I am, almost 2 years later, and it has been quite the experience. It has been both beautiful and interesting. I have 3 kids in the system, 2 in the high school system and 1 in the elementary school system. And it has been where I have said, my goodness, I am knocking it out the park from an academic standpoint, and I am failing them miserably from an identity standpoint. They are struggling. They are losing a sight of themselves. They want to straighten their hair every day. They are getting lost in the sauce. They struggle every day in an identity crisis that I feel, frankly, like a failure, right? I've answered the call from an academic standpoint and failed them on a cultural identity standpoint. So, fast forward, I said, I know, I'm going to throw you a party, and we're going to have a party, and we're going to invite all of your friends. And that was a failure, because they went to school the next day, and they said, Mom, everybody Googled you. And I said, well, what do you mean they Googled me? And they said, Mom, they don't understand. And I said, well, what don't they understand? And they said, well, how do we live here? So what do you mean, how do we live here? We moved here. The U-Haul truck was outside. And that's when I realized the narrative, the how. And the how only came because it doesn't add up. Your mom, she's a single mom. Okay, I can understand that on some level. There's a degree of affluence in Long Meadow that it doesn't add up, but it's also, there's another degree. There's an ethnicity component. You're a single brown woman. How could you possibly live in Long Meadow? Who? Mom, they want to know, were you adopted? And so the questions, were you saved by the Great White Hope? And is that how, somehow, you got here? And I took a deep breath and I said, oh goodness, here I go again to change the narrative. This is exhausting. Okay. And so when I saw the call to action, and I can appreciate, I think some of the other applicants talked about what I call people of color exhaustion, where we are often exhausted by being in a room, and I can appreciate, I think there's a genuine call to action, and they're like, please show us the way, and we're like, please learn the way, because we are infinitely exhausted. But I think there is also a call to action. I do think I've also met incredible people where I can also discern it's really hard to understand the way when you've lived in a really homogeneous environment, and perhaps you don't understand that narrative. You are trying to figure out how a single mom, brown woman can afford to live in Long Meadow, and you want to connect the dots, and you want to understand if I was adopted along the way by some wonderful white couple who managed to send me to a private college, and that's how the journey came about. And I want to share with you that my parents were militant, and they made it clear that my boyfriend was going to be math and science, and that was the only solution, and that is how my journey came to be. And so, and that typically such is the story that most of us of all walks of life have the same desires for our children, and that is to do better. But that the truth is that we don't all have the same opportunities. And that I would challenge individuals to really understand that at the core, we all have the same desires for our children, and no matter what colors we are, but we don't always have the same opportunities. And I also feel compelled, my children happen to be much lighter than I am, and they fall in different spectrums. And I also watch my son, who, as many of you know, teenagers, the standard uniform of a teenage boy is a hoodie. And it could be 150 degrees outside, and they have hoodies. And as I see him walk in a hoodie, I also feel a call to action, because he does not, no one bats an eye. And I also feel a call to action, because I need to feel compelled for someone else's son who may not have the opportunity to walk the street at 150 degrees or winter or whenever and wear a hoodie. And so here I am, and again with a strong sense of passion. I think changing the narrative, I think the more conversations that we have, I think when I see Isabella, who is my middle one, in the mirror, infinitely trying to straighten her hair, I need to, what I do understand is we can't love and appreciate that which we don't see. And so if she doesn't see it, she can't embrace it. From a recruitment standpoint, I don't necessarily think that policies in and of itself are biased. I think the implementation of policies may be biased. I can tell you that in the workforce, I see a lot of what we deem to be professional is often biased. As a Latin woman, I am often, adornment, being colorful is sometimes unprofessional. It's not unprofessional, it's different. There's clearly unprofessional behavior, and then there's different behavior. And so I think it's the implementation, it's how policies are used to weaponize in a workforce that can promote bias. So, Mark, that's just to answer a question that you had earlier. But I think what's most important, and I want folks to understand, that diversity and inclusion is not a trending buzzword. It is not a check the box, right? It is our strength. It is where we are going to progress. It is where you're going to get untapped genius and treasures and elements of difference that will only elevate your communities in ways that you may have never imagined. And so I challenge you to really look at difference as an opportunity versus something that needs to be accommodated.
I think you followed Saul just fine. Any other questions from the board? I see you're on the Bay State Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Do you think you'll be able to bring lessons from that to the town setting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great, it's a huge organization, and I think that there's a lot of possible overlaps just from a kind of large institution like so, for sure.
All right. Great, thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Pletzer, please come on up.
Mr. Levine, also just to let you know, there was one person on the Zoom who I believe.
Oh, okay.
Mike said I could hand out these flyers. Thank you. I'll take one. Hi, my name is Stefan Platzer. I used to live on 844 Long Meadow Street. I live now on 100 Hilltop Road in Long Meadow. I've been here over 40 years combined. And I think there's a lot of wonderful things about Long Meadow, but there are also some bad things, and I think that's what we have to address. And I think we're discovering some of these bad things, unfortunately. I am one of the founding members of LARC. It's the Long Meadow Anti-Racism Coalition. I changed the name from racist person to the ism. First year was Black Lives Matter. The second year we added Stop Asian Hate. Next we started working on anti-Semitism. Dan knows Eric Lesser, I assume, very well.
I do, yes.
He's written some great reviews of what we've tried to do against anti-Semitism. And the last thing we're doing right now is violence, be it gun violence, be it domestic violence, be it gang warfare. In Springfield, there's still a lot of gang fighting going on, and also international violence, basically Ukraine and elsewhere. So we've expanded, and we will continue to expand. We want a better world. One of the things we did was have these standouts. We got the award from the Martin Luther King Jr. Family Service Award because of our standout. When I was a teenager here in this town, I went down to Washington, D.C. and heard Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous speech. I guess I've been an activist for a long, long time. The other thing is I was a research director down in North Carolina for 8 years, and I experienced segregation, which I found totally unacceptable. Basically, the work area was restricted basically to black people, and the administration was white people, and it was a locked door between the two, and they were not allowed to talk to each other. When there were book events, friends of mine of all nationalities, the black people felt very uncomfortable going into some of these bookstores, which was horrible. And again, I think, we're better off here in Massachusetts, but still, we have a way to go. The other thing I want to mention is this thing, which is the Ernestina, which is now the official vessel of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Last Thursday, we got an award from the Cape Verdean ambassador for this gift that was given to from the Cape Verdeans to the United States. The United States rejected it, so therefore they gave it to Massachusetts. And that's why it's now in Massachusetts. It was built in Massachusetts back in 1894. There's a famous Gloucester man at the wheel. That is the son of the original owner. So it's got a wonderful, wonderful history in Massachusetts. The other thing I want to mention is I'm very proud of my son, who is a famous lawyer. He got the award for under 40-year Lawyer of the Year in the United States. And he is the person who got gay marriages equality, that gay people were discriminated against with regards to their marriage equality. And so therefore, Massachusetts became the first state to ever get the Equality Award. When the Supreme Court decided to overrule every other state which voted against it, in particular North Carolina voted against it, the Supreme Court overruled all these states, and they quoted from my son's amicus brief that they said, because of Luke Platzer, we are going to have equality of rights. And again, to me, one has to not just talk about things, but one has to be active about things and get things done. There's some wonderful teachers here at the high school and elsewhere, and we have to appreciate them. But there are also, like Eric Lesser pointed to me, anti-Semitism is increasing here in Long Meadow, which I'm not really aware of. But I believe what he's saying. We've had meetings at the First Church between Bethel and the First Church, and we find out, yes, there is a lot of anti-Semitism going on, which, again, I always think we're living in a bubble, but there's actually some bad things going on. So that's, again, I'm an activist, and I want to see things move in a positive direction.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you, we appreciate it.
Good. You can go through the list of all the other things I'm involved in.
Very impressive, thank you. Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Christopher Morris, and I live at 40 South Ave in Longmeadow.
Okay, what brings you to apply for the DEI committee?
Well, I feel a little taken back with some of the great things that were already said and some of the background that some of the other people that have come before me, I'm kind of taken back. I saw this on the website and I wanted to be involved in it. I don't have the background that the gentleman that was just before us. What I do have is life experience. I do have views on it, mostly about, I think, education, trying to get people interested in seeing these differences and accepting them, moving past this division that we're creating, I think, in our society, whether it be Semitism or racism, any of the isms. So I wanted to join and be a part into something that would be positive for our community. I had 2 children that went through Longmeadow. The young lady that was speaking before about coming and bringing her children in. My children, I brought them here for the schooling also. They didn't fit in because of the economic kind of background. Was a construction worker for many years, and now I've got a little bit of free time. I work at the post office in East Longmeadow, and I wanted to get involved in something that I felt as though I could make a difference in my town. So that's why I'm here.
Well, that's wonderful, thank you. Any questions from the rest of the board?
No.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morris. We appreciate you appearing and speaking with us tonight.
You're welcome.
And I just want to say to everyone, I appreciate the applications. We did some really wonderful applications, and I think it's been very illuminating just hearing everyone speak today, and has got got the wheels turning in my head. And I think that that's going to be an important thing that the DEI committee does. And so I thank you all for your interest. Anytime we put out a call like this, it's really gratifying to know that we have people in town who want to help and want to make it a better town. And so thank you very much for your interest, and we will be voting.
How many more
So we had, I think there's been 11 applicants.
Yeah, there's 11 applicants total.
So Mike's been reaching out to people, but we haven't confirmed meetings yet. So we had 6 tonight, and there's 9 openings. So But we will vote at a future meeting, and you'll hear from us. But, yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, resident comments. Hey, Tom?
Mike, if you wouldn't mind passing those out, thank you. You're one step ahead of me. So, Tom Shea, 81 Green Meadow Drive. I'm here to discuss a highly controversial amendment to the Massachusetts Water Management Act by the DEP. My correspondence of November 2nd to you is attached to tonight's agenda. There are two major issues. The first is the proposed regulations. The first 1 1/4 pages of the handout are a summary of the amended regulation, which gets directly to the issue. The regulations themselves, as someone pointed out, run to 41 pages. There are two major sections that I have noted with red stars. The first is restriction of non-essential outdoor water use by registrants during times of drought declared by the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Second is the user group that will be most affected will be 63 registered water users, suppliers, and their customers. Long Meadow is a customer of Springfield, who will be required to limit non-essential outdoor water use. At the town meeting of October 25th, citizens voted to delete a provision of the water usage warrant regarding a declaration of a state of drought declared by the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So exactly what is being proposed by the DEP. The town needs to oppose the proposed regulation because the residents have told you they are opposed to unnecessary DEP regulations not specific to our water resource provider. The local resource provider, Springfield, should be in control of its resource and any water curtailments. The blanket drought edicts from the state are by region, not taking into consideration the resources of specific reservoirs. Kindly look at the colored map I provided to you. The DEP imposes drought level restrictions on whole sections of 7 regions of the state. If the proposed regulations were in place this summer, Long Meadow, as well as the other customers of Springfield, would have experienced on June 2nd a significant drought proclamation mandating watering curtailment only by hand, and on August 9th, a critical drought, non-essential watering ban. A day later, on August 10th, the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission issued a statement that reservoir levels were considered normal and no water restrictions were necessary. The DEP is attempting to impose regulations for problems that do not exist and is looking to impose a form of water socialism. One town might have adequate resources, one town might, so they're going to the lowest common denominator. The second major issue is the town's lack of knowledge of this issue. Proposed regulations have been around since 2021 or before.
You have 30 seconds, Tom.
Yep. Let me go to the conclusion then. The proposed DEP regulations impact each of Long Meadow's 5,500 residents and citizens. In accordance with Select Board policy, I'm calling on a minimum of a single Select Board member to make a motion to amend tonight's agenda and add an agenda item to discuss the DEP proposal. Majority of the Select Board members can then pass the motion. I then call upon the Select Board to subsequently instruct the town manager or DPW head to formally oppose the proposed DEP regulations by November 18th for the reasons I stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, moving on to Select Board comments. Tom?
I guess I'll make one. We had our town meeting, and I spoke to a resident afterwards who had signed a petition to have an election trying to get and have an election to have an additional person put on the select board. We have 4 members. We generally have 5 members. We had Steve Morantz, who stepped down, and the town, was trying to decide what to do. The select board looked at it, and we had a pretty good discussion saying that it was going to cost $10,000 to $15,000 to have a special election to add 1 person to this board. We're a pretty functional board. We thought by the time there was an election, it was going to only give the person a few months on the board. And so there are folks who are trying to overturn our decision by having people sign a petition. The folks who signed the petition aren't aware of a couple of things. One is they aren't aware that it's going to cost the town a significant amount of money to hold a special election. They may have told some people, but not everyone is aware of that. They also aren't aware exactly who's going to be running if there is a special election. And so I guess as this process develops, I would ask people to ask some questions before you sign a petition to hold a special election, because it is going to cost the town money. By the time the person get a voice, at this point in the year, it's November, they would get appointed, they'd probably only be on the board a few months, like 3 months, 4 months max. And we're in the middle of the budget process already at that point. So I would say that if there is going to be a special election for someone to sit on this board, I would encourage a lot of people to run. I wouldn't want this to end up being a situation where just one person has gets a lot of signatures so that they can run to be on this board. And I would like to encourage people who, in a community, who may have been looking for an opportunity to be on the select board, that if this happens, please consider it or encourage your friends to run for the board, because it's going to cost us a lot of money, and if it just happens for one person, I'd be a little disappointed, actually.
I just echo what Tom said. A lot of the discussion we have in this town is about how tight our budget is with our tax base and the mill rate, and to spend a lot of money on something for a limited amount of time just, to me, doesn't make economic sense. And the reasons why, when July, when this came up, I think, maybe August, why we didn't choose to have an election then, because things are working well, we aren't having tie votes, we have a brand-new clerk. Those things have only gotten more true. Well, those are still true, and it's only less time on the board as we go. And by the time we get to the end of November and we start this process, it's really, it's just not a great use of our limited funds, I think. But I do, if we're going to have an election, people need to be active. People need to, this is your way to get your voice heard. So I agree with what you said, Tom, and thank you for bringing it up. Dan?
Yeah, I was actually going to make some comments about this issue at a later date once we had, once the petition was successful, but because it was brought up today, I definitely wanted to join in the conversation. So, there's been a lot of things going on the interwebs that people are just making false statements when it comes to the decision of the select board. So it was under the select board's purview to make that vote to not have a special election. That is part of the town charter. So you can't make up your own facts. You can have your own opinion and disagree with the vote. As Mark Gold said, you can petition and have 200 signatures, which is what this group has done, but you're not entitled to making up your own facts. So if you disagree, and you get 200 signatures for a special election. But people aren't going around telling people that this costs $15,000. These are the same people that tout themselves as fiscal conservatives, and here we have $15,000 that could be spent elsewhere in the town, and we don't need to have this election. But that's the direction that a group of 4 or 5 people decided to make, and they're allowed to make that. But you can't make up your own facts, so I just want to be clear on that. So if we do have a special election, I do encourage many other residents to pull papers and run. And I hope I hope a lot of people come out and turn out and vote if we have a special election. But I just wanted to be clear on misinformation that's going out there, because this is happening at the local level now, and it's unfortunate because we've seen what happened at the national level as well. So I just wanted to make those comments. I agree with the board as well with your statements. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, just say, I agree with the 3 statements before me about the election. As Dan indicated, it was a decision in the select board. I certainly stand behind it based on the status that was our town clerk status at the time, the cost, and what we were likely to gain. And even now, we know what the timing is. The earliest the vote could be is 92 days from when the petition is approved, so we're way out there. But what I really want to do is just bring the select board up to date on a couple of other items that we've been doing, just because I generally use comments to bring people up to date on, general meetings that I've attended on behalf of the board. I've been, at Scannick Valley Health Consortium, and they're seeming to do well and moving along forward. Well, Pioneer Valley Transit Authority is moving along well. But I attended because they have stopped doing Zoom meetings. I attended the most recent Hampden County Regional Retirement Board, and I think people here know that that's kind of a concern of mine. And coming out of it, I actually sent an email. I see Paul Pasterzik is here, that one of the issues on their agenda was to eliminate the audit committee. The audit committee has been very successful. Paul Pasterzik's on it. I think he's the chair of it. That they've been very successful in overseeing some of the things that group does. They're looking to eliminate the audit committee. One of their members, Michelle Hill, was not there at the time. She was participating remotely. I think she successfully argued to defer this, but I think it's just a matter before their next meeting, before they do their best to eliminate outside oversight. And I don't know what we can do about it, if we can do anything about it. It's their right, theoretically, to do that. Been in touch with our friends at the Pension Review Board and Pure Act and the state. They really don't want to have a lot to do anymore. I think they've kind of wiped their hands of the Hampden County Regional Retirement Board. But we will see what goes on there. I think that there's still some issues going on, and we're still looking to see if there's any alternatives to pursuing recovery of the money that was lost through the mishandling or illegal, and some more determined to be illegal activities of the board during the 2014 to 2017 period. So I hope to report more about that.
Well, Mark, could the Attorney General's office help us with these things? Because, getting rid of the audit committee after you get caught by the audit committee screwing up is, you think there'd be some, Attorney General issues there.
So, Tom, I can't answer that because I don't know.
No.
I will tell you that we have been told indirectly, several of us, that the Attorney General's office was, and I have to believe is still, but I don't know that they are still investigating the findings of the Pure Act audit for issues of illegality.
Okay.
But where they go, I think they will go with or without our encouragement, probably more without our encouragement than even if we try to encourage them, and that may help. We still have a couple of things that a group of communities is looking to do, and rather than kind of attorney-client stuff, let's talk to our town attorneys and other attorneys and see if there's actions we can take. My goal has been, and I had a lengthy discussion with their I think his title's treasurer, but he's their board chairman after the meeting, and I reiterated to him that my goal has and will continue to be recovery of the funds lost, to try to make the funding program for our retirees more closer to what it should be, with the thought that had that money not been lost, we probably wouldn't be in a situation where we're being charged 8% more per year put into the system to try to make up for their funding shortfall in pensions. So with the knowledge that our intent is clearly to recover lost funding and try to do right by our retirees and employees who are members of this agency, I'll continue to report and go to the meetings. I don't know if you had anything to say, or Paul, you weren't there, but you got my note. So,
No, they responded.
yeah, so.
Well, thank you for keeping up on that. We
Yeah,
appreciate it, on the updates. Anything else?
Yeah, real quick. So I had, I think, well, Mark, I know that you attended because I saw you on TV.
Right.
But I was remote for the planning board for the Armadas reconstruction. Looks like it's moving forward, so that's always a good thing. I think some of the financial aspects were broken into a couple different phases, but Mark, I thought you did a good job on bringing up some of the concerns just around the abutters and the smell from the restaurants and that type of stuff.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Dan, I think I should update the other couple of bit. I mean, the issues that, at least I hear and we've heard before, I said, look, there are three issues that we hear from residents when something like this is concerned, is noise, odor, and light pollution from all-night lights. And if they can deal with those, we welcome back to the community. I think that was the summary. And they're struggling a little bit with some of these things because the site and design review was really at I'm going to say a macro scale and didn't get into some of those details. And I think the planning board was interested, or would prefer to have heard some of those details. Dan, you were on it.
Yeah,
Is that
I think so. I mean, it sounds like they're going to address those,
Right.
but yeah.
Okay. Next up, town manager's report.
Thank you. So tonight, in the report is the quarterly legal expense update. We have both columns here showing what we were at the end of FY22 and where we stand right now for FY23. We are tracking about the same as what we have in the past fiscal year. Do you want me? I can go through the numbers if you want, or I'm sure you're all looking at it.
It's attached. If anybody has any questions, I'm beginning to read on this in particular.
Great. And definitely, if any members of the public have questions, just reach out to me and we can go through it together. The Waste Management Curbside Collection Program. So the Department of Public Works, Town Manager's Office, and Select Board, both or individually, have all been aware of a rise in curbside pickup delays. And actually, just tonight, while we were sitting here, there was several other streets that were delayed today. So staff have been in communications with Waste Management on these issues. If a resident has a pickup issue, it is best to call the DPW, 567-3400. They're in daily communication with Waste Management. The DPW works with them to identify the households and streets that were missed and schedule collection for the next day, unless the missed pickup is due to a resident not having the barrel out. Additionally, there's a 1-800 number for Waste Management that's printed on the trash and recycling calendar that is distributed out to residents annually. That number is 1-800-972-4545. The DPW updates the website anytime Waste Management reports breakdowns or missed streets, but generally those happen in the evening and the website might not be updated until the morning. DPW is tracking the list of streets that are delayed or missed, so I would encourage everyone to call the DPW with this information. They're the best point of contact to make this issue known. And then we're working with Waste Management to try to lessen the amount that this is happening. Moving on to an auction of DPW equipment. We are continuing to look at what's unneeded equipment or end-of-life equipment to try to clean up the old DPW yard. And we just held an online auction of 19 plow blades. They all sold for a total of $12,610. This helps clean up the yard and bring in some revenue. And late last week, no, actually, late 2 weeks ago, we launched a new website. It is a completely redesigned municipal website, and it has a great new look, but it also has some enhanced features to make things a little bit more easily accessible. And we have a new URL. It's www.longmeadowma.gov to better align with the government services provided. We'll have a redirect for about 6 months of the old site to the new URL, so that people can get used to that. The work on the site is a result of a 6-month-long redesign process by town staff and Civic Plus, our website vendor. The website has those enhanced interactive resources, a direct access to forms and applications, which we had heard a lot of feedback about, as well as a cleaner and easier to use layout. The success of the project is directly attributed to Mike Barbieri's oversight as the project manager. So huge thanks to Mike there to see that through. And some of the big features that I want to highlight, we have a Stay Connected, Notify Me module, which we did have on the old site, but we're planning to make a lot more use of it now, and it's easier to access information that way. You can sign up to receive newsletter subscriptions or agenda postings as they are published. There's interactive buttons on the website that have quick access to online bill pay, agendas and minutes, employment opportunities, forms, and more. We can also switch those out based on analytics that we'll be running. We're looking at probably quarterly to figure out what the members of the public are searching, and so we'll switch those buttons to accommodate that. It's no surprise that trash and recycling is one of the biggest search terms, so we have that prominently featured on the homepage. Residents can create their own personalized dashboards to stay up to date with information that they find most relevant to them. And there is a staff directory on each department webpage that has name, email, and phone number for every staff person in the office. And that concludes my update for tonight.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, just a couple of comments or questions, Lynn, and just so people understand the issues that Lynn spoke about that have to do with waste management and curbside pickup have been going on for some time. And after talking to Josh and Lynn and actually our recycling committee, I sent a letter to the waste management representative, Roy Boyer, to invite him to a select board meeting. He's working with his folks, and hopefully he'll get back to us, so we may have a chance just to hear from waste management themselves on what actions they're taking. I told them, we're not trying to attack them, we're just trying to get answers for the public to understand what actions they're taking to try to alleviate the issues. So hopefully that will work a little bit better. Couple of things, Lynn. I want to renew my request for, at least in the DPW, we used to get data on water purchase, trash pounds disposed, and recycling pounds, and we used to get it every month. We only really need it quarterly, but did not get the end of last year's, nor did we, I don't know if we're collecting them for the first quarter of this year. We didn't get the first quarter of this year's either. So if we can get that data, it certainly helps when we're trying to set fees for some of those things, and so that would be very helpful, I believe. The last thing I wanted to do is just comment about the new website that was rolled out. This is actually version 4 of the Long Meadow website, but I wanted to use the Wayback Machine and go back 25 years, because it's 25 years ago, 2 weeks from now, that the Long Meadow website was rolled out. It was rolled out by 5 volunteers and Farida Pomerantz, who was the town IT person at the time. The volunteers were Rick Beal, Jane Berg, Donna Fisher, Jim Moran, and myself, and it was done really as a volunteer program. The name, the URL, longmeadow.org, was chosen because it was the one that was available to us as volunteers. If we looked, there was, I think, Ames, Iowa, and Concord, Massachusetts were the only other 2 community websites at the time, and Concord also used the .org, so we figured what the heck, we'd go to .org, and it ran that way for many, many years, and we've got all kinds of history of what that looked like. I remember I would do high school sports on a daily basis. We'd update the sports and the lunch menus and the menus at the adult center and things like that. But it's come a very, very long way, and it's probably about time that it took that next step to something that's a little bit more professional. But I just wanted to recognize the 5 people who did this way back when. It was back when nobody had really heard of the internet, and the town wasn't really interested in spending any money on the internet, as we recall. Although the town paid for the URL, they didn't pay for any of the software that we were using or things that we were doing, but the town did help us pay for the name. So I just wanted to recognize that it's literally 25 years ago that started, and I looked today at because there is actually a Wayback System on the internet that you can go and look at pages from, and it was fascinating to see these pages from 25 years ago and what was still there, but it was some of the same things.
Well, Mark, thank you for your work on this way back when. And Mike, I think I've gotten some comments on it. I think it looks great. It's much more user-friendly. So thank you for that. But speaking of longmeadow.org, is ownership going, are we just going to give up the certificate? How does that work? Does ownership revert to the, because we don't want somebody putting on a different website than longmeadow.org. Is there any way we can park it?
Yes, I believe there is, and eventually we'll also switch our email extension too.
Oh, no, but longmeadow.org, when we stop forwarding in 6
Right.
months, we
Right.
we want it to, why doesn't it just forward forever, I guess? Isn't it just $10 to post it forever?
I think it's a little more, but yeah,
Okay.
we could definitely look at that. We've
That's
just
pretty cheap.
extended it out for 6 months right now.
Okay.
But the plan is to migrate our email to that
Yeah.
extension as well, so then we would extend it for much, much longer.
And I think that that's great, but because there's still going to be longmeadow.org links out there forever. People are going
Mhm.
to see it on old things. And I just don't want somebody clicking on it and, I think
Yep.
White House.
Getting something inappropropriate.
WhiteHouse.com is
Yeah.
famous for that, so, yeah. So anything we can avoid with that, right, so.
Yep.
But, yeah, as I said, it looks great, and I think it works a lot better. So I appreciate all your hard work to Mike and everyone else who worked on it. Rest of the board?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Moving on to old business. Approval of the October 17th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I'll move we approve the minutes of October 22nd.
Second?
Yeah, October 20.
October
I think it's
17th.
October 17th.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
There were some, I think Mike caught all the typos that he sent, so. Okay.
And then next up on old business, Select Board Representative to the Long Range Plan Steering Committee. I'd like to nominate Dan Zwerko as our representative. No second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on this? I know we kind of railroaded you onto this, but I think it's a good spot for you. And I know you do a lot around town, but I think this is a good use of your time. And as I said, you're younger than me, not much, but you got more of a future to look ahead of in Long Meadow. So,
And it gives you the right to first refusal of the next committees we try to force you on.
It does?
Well, what an honor and a privilege. I appreciate the nomination.
nominated I will not run, if elected I will not serve. Okay, any further discussion? We appreciate you stepping up, Dan, even if we forced you.
No, actually, the past couple of weeks, I was thinking more about this and just being, going through the schools and all the tours of the buildings and, riding my bike growing up throughout town and now being on the select board. It's just pretty cool to be able to make an impact. So it'll be a lot of fun, I think, actually, over the next few years. So
Great,
appreciate it.
okay. All those in favor? Unanimous, okay, great. Paul, come on up. First up on new business, draft fiscal year 2024 budget assumptions, calendar, directives, and goals.
The budget assumptions, I think we'll start there. I didn't do all the numbers like I usually do historically, because just a lot of numbers, more confusing probably than anything. So I just left you with the narratives of the budget assumptions that we plan on using for FY '24, very similar to those in years past. A lot of it is better news than prior year past. And, you know, the bottom line, if you do the addition to these, and we'll go through these individually, but if you do the addition, it's only about $300,000 in the red. And that is probably the lowest amount to start off a draft, a budget season being in the red. We've always come out in the good. We've always started with $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 in the red. So, and I think that the presentation is going to get better. I'm anticipating that the new growth for FY for this current year is going to be higher than projected. So that will carry forward into next year. Those numbers are not finalized. It's basically the new growth from the personal property and public utilities, the gas company and the electric companies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, quite a bit of new growth that will come into play in FY '23. Again, that number will carry forward to FY '24, and it's not part of this as of yet. So that's why these numbers will improve as we move forward.
Well, what I saw, $175,000, is that what it was?
175 was the original estimate. It's kind of a standard amount that we put in there.
They're putting a garage? Because the prices of houses have gone right through the roof.
It really has nothing to do with the prices. It is the if somebody does put on a garage or something to that nature, or does a complete redo of a kitchen that adds, you know, I'll just say there are some high.
100,000.
There are some expensive kitchens that do get done in Long Meadow that you know would add quite a bit of dollars to the taxes. But like I said, it's going to be the public utilities that are going to drive a larger number in FY '23. And once that number is finalized, we'll get it into the numbers. And I think once that is all said and done, this will probably come out to be a near even projection for FY '24, which I've never presented before that, anything near that.
I'll attest to that.
Right. You know, the first assumption we always make is the property taxes. It's a pretty easy calculation. The 2.5% on the prior year levy roughly is going to equate to about $1.36 million. Above and beyond that, the Finance Committee has taken a position where instead of raising only 1.75% of the 2.5 allowable amount, I think they have sent you a letter, I believe they have.
Yep.
They said they were going to.
Yep.
Their proposal was 2.44, raise it almost to the maximum. That would mean an extra $400,000 that we could come up with in taxation for FY '24. That's part of the big boost in helping out any projections going forward.
Paul, can I interrupt? Where do we think that puts us relative to our, you know, property value ceiling?
Mark, I think there's going to be a wider gap between our levy capacity and our actual levy. And that's basically because I believe that the sales value is going to drive up the valuation far more than 2.5% when it is finally done this fall.
So, pardon me for even thinking this, but I'm going to say it too, does that mean our tax rate may moderate?
Our tax rate will moderate, yes.
That's a euphemism for perhaps go down.
Well,
Now, again, I don't want to confuse people. The tax bill
will go up.
Will still go up.
this has been the argument the whole time, and people say our taxes are
Right.
high, so no, no
Right.
raise.
So, I mean, if you want to get a vote, you say your tax rate's going down to the public, and leave it there.
Under our leadership, yeah.
But, yes, more than likely, the tax rate will go down, basically because of the high valuations that are expected when the taxable valuations are done in you know, weeks from now. In a couple of weeks, they'll be certified, so. Again, the standard amount, new growth, 175,000. Historically, it comes in higher. Again, I'm expecting FY '23 to come in higher. If you look back previous years, it's always been higher. But again, we're keeping that somewhat conservative because we just don't know. State aid, projecting a 4% increase. The state overall is doing very well with its economy, and we're just hoping that they're going to share some of that with the local communities. The increase in state aid for FY23 from FY22 was over $800,000. It was up about 11%. So this number we're anticipating should be fairly conservative, but that will all be dependent on the new governor's budget proposal.
When was the last time we saw 4%? Has that been a while?
4% probably 2 or 3 years ago. Because there were certain points in time where we were only allotted what's known as the per pupil amount, which might have been $30, and that would amount to maybe $70,000, $80,000 in total Chapter 70 money, and then a little bit on the lottery money, the general government kind of municipal aid. So it wasn't that long ago that we saw minimal increases.
Yeah.
So, knock on wood that the state shares in the wealth that they have right now, which is anticipated. And I think 4% is probably a reasonable number.
So the question may be, how do we elicit our state representatives to let them know that the state's got a $2 billion surplus, excess so far this fiscal year, to come back and share that with the town? How do
Well, yeah.
maybe we should be bringing them in here right after the election, Josh, and letting them know we need some of that. I mean, because really, there's a state's revenues running way over projections
Exactly,
for even the current fiscal year.
I can't figure out what to do with all of it.
Send it here, we'll use it.
Yeah, we'll find a spot for
Yeah.
it, right?
No problem.
Like I said, the FY23 numbers, I mean, we got 11% increase over $800,000. I mean, that's basically what bailed the budget out the current fiscal year. But, when the projections were done, I don't think they were projected to be $800,000 higher. I imagine there was maybe a 2 or 3% increase, a couple $100,000. So there was a big influx of money that came from the state for FY23. And even more came in after the governor's budget. By the time it went through the House and the Senate, there was more money that was voted above and beyond what the governor had proposed. So it was added bonus money because, as we moved the projects forward or we moved the budget forward, we started to use the governor's budget to alleviate some of the deficit that was projected. And then when all was said and done, I don't say we had a windfall, but there was more than what was anticipated when that budget went to with the town meeting last May. So, local receipts are doing fairly well. New vehicle prices are going up. Long Meadow does do very well with motor vehicle excise taxes, so we are expecting that to continue. As the interest rates go up, that's only going to enhance that local receipt. We've already collected in interest revenue this year through October more than we've collected all of last year. So that's how much the interest rates have impacted that. And a few of the others will just go up by the nature of inflation, and probably there's going to be a few that we need to look at because the town needs to recoup its costs when it's setting its fees as it moves forward. But I'm only putting in a 2% increase, which I believe is fairly reasonable. The Water Enterprise Fund, the Select Board has a policy moving forward to by the year 2036, to have stormwater fees fully cover the stormwater budget. That calls for roughly a 4% increase in the amount that the fees cover every year of the total budget. So in FY23, 50.72% of the stormwater budget was covered by fees. That is anticipated to go up it's anticipated to go up to 54.83% in FY23. If we have a level funded budget, meaning the stormwater in FY23, the full budget is identical to the FY24 bottom line, there would still be an increase of $44,000 that would not be used from the tax levy because it would be coming from the fees. So altogether, and finally, again, we're not projecting to use any reserves for the FY24 budget. It's been a common practice. Just don't want to get into that habit. But all in all, the budget assumptions for the sources equate to about $2.4 million additional dollars coming in FY24 over FY23. On the uses side, relatively a 3% increase covers the cost of living adjustments and the step increases that are built into the collective bargaining agreements. In total, between the school and the town, roughly about $1.25 million. Other expenses, we're never going to be able to cover the inflationary rates that are going on now. We will have to prioritize, and I only put in a 1% increase. We'll see what we can afford as time goes on. But just right now, the people may have to prioritize certain things as we move forward. The employee benefits, another big factor with the increase. Retirement, as Mark alluded to, that 8%, that's the maximum amount that the retirement system as a whole can go up annually. Their actuarial studies will say that that 8% number is will be coming true in FY24 and for the foreseeable future. It may vary slightly depending on the types of wages increases from other participants in Hampden County as opposed to Long Meadows, but it should be relatively around that 8%. That's $321,000. Liability insurance at 3% is $25,000, and I'm only including 3% because I think there was a little bit extra money budgeted for in FY23, so I'm anticipating a surplus at the end of this fiscal year, that line item. Health insurance at 6%, that equates to about $267,000. Retirees at 5% is a $77,000 increase. The Medicare is a matching share, and as wages go up at 3%, that Medicare amount will go up by the same amount. That's $18,000. And to get OPEB funded from the operating budget, as a, from FY23 to FY24, is going to call for an additional $306,000. Your FY23 OPEB money was funded at $336,000, I believe, from the operations, but the other money came from free cash at the last town meeting. So to get it all coming out of the operating money, it's going to take another $306,000.
Wow.
So again, that's about $1.1 million when you add up all those. Debt service, looking at the feasibility study, adding roughly about $200,000 to the debt service. Again, the OPEB trust, there's another line about the OPEB trust money, but you know that money is covered in the employee benefit sections. And then the capital contribution at 3%, that would equate to about $79,000 extra to fully, or I shouldn't say to fully fund, but to fund that at 3%. So this takes a lot of the policies that the select board has, funds them at levels minimally of what they've been done in the past, and brings you about $300,000 shy when you compare the uses to the sources. But again, I think once the FY23 new growth comes in on the public utilities, I think we're going to find that we're getting very, very close to a level projection here for FY24.
Jeff, Paul, in the last couple of years, we've chosen to defer some of the OPEB funding to the special fall town meeting using, as you said, free cash. When budget time comes along, will we have any sense of what we're doing in the current budget relative to actual expenses versus budget expenses as a way of projecting maybe there will be free cash again in the next year this time to play that same game?
There probably could be, and you know, Mark, I'm conservative, so I would say yes, because there are going to be certain revenues that are going to be exceeding budgets. As an example, I just said the interest revenue is already ahead of where we were in full last year. We'll have our revenue set. We don't have our tax rate set for FY23, but by that time we'll have the tax rate set. We'll know everything will be locked in to make the comparisons for FY24. So when it comes to revenues, we will be able to identify certain revenues that are going to exceed what the budget amounts are, and that's part of the free cash calculation. And we can look at the departmental budgets to see where there are projected turnbacks. And again, the combination of those two, unexpended appropriations and revenues exceeding budgetary amounts, that's what makes the free cash number. So I can give you a very conservative estimate in February.
Well, because I think that historically, it's been a good way for us to moderate the budget, balance the budget, and yet still meet our OPEB funding, which is not mandatory, not a budget part, but something we're trying to do. And then I'm going to ask you, the final question is what year do we start pulling out of that OPEB to reducing our OPEB budget expenses, and where does that come up? And for everybody, that means that, we're putting money in this OPEB fund. The idea is when it's funded, it then supports the medical benefits for our retirees through its interest.
Right.
But right now, we're still putting money in. But at some point, we ought to be able to start taking money out, because like anything else, the money we pay for that now comes out of our operating budget. It'd be nice to have it come out of the revenue from the OPEB fund.
Well, let me go back to your first statement about funding the OPEB.
Paul, we're one of the 50 smartest or 50 dumbest?
No, all I want to say is you opened up a window for Lynn and myself by saying we don't have to fully fund that 100% because we're going to look at next year's free cash, which is fine. It's not our goal.
It's clearly not our goal, but
it
that's
is
what
one of the
we've used in the past.
Right, it is a solution to get that done. Now, on your second question, what do we have in the OPEB fund?
4 million or
maybe $5 million.
Something,
We have it here.
it dropped a little bit, but.
$5.8 million. Now,
5.8 out of
a liability of
25 or 30 million.
Right. So I'm going to have to say, in all honesty, I would not be withdrawing money out of that in the near future.
Jeez.
But I would say it's 20% funded, so let's draw 20% of our OPEB money out of it.
And then you're going to start to deplete that fund for
No, not if we're just taking out earnings.
Oh, if you're going to take out earnings,
20% of the earnings on it?
No, take out the earnings, which should be some small percentage of what our expenses are.
Yes, and I can tell by your smile.
No,
I think that's a great idea. But I would say.
It's more emotional than
Yeah, but when we get
fiscal.
when we're at the $25 per thousand, when we reach that and we're in trouble, that's when we should start taking the interest, but not till then. I mean, and that's, because right now, that's still 10 years off in the future, that we're going to reach our maximum tax rate. And I could see, then we can all be smiling. Saying we could take the interest from that and help cover some of those costs, but, it seems a little early to make that suggestion.
I hear you, Tom, but, what we put into OPEB covers medical expenses of people who retired long ago, and then the future medical expenses of current employees. That part will likely always come out of our operating budget. The future medical expenses of current retirees, and should go into this OPEB fund. But what right now, we're paying for benefits for people who retired 5, 10, 20 or more years ago. And the whole goal of an OPEB fund is that you don't pay for it out of current income, you pay for it out of money that's been put aside.
I think your policy specifically states you can start taking it out at a $5 million balance. I believe that is right in your policy.
I believe you're right.
So, if you start taking it out, or a portion of it, I would look at it as a last resort, almost. Next fiscal year is projected, right now anyway, I think everything can be done, and we don't need to touch it. When you're talking a couple years later, if we get into a deep recession, and the state's not doing well, the local receipts aren't doing well, and we're really tightening things and are looking for funds and cutting back on capital, I think that's just another little area that could be looked at to offset some of the hurt.
Yeah,
Yeah, while we have the room, I'd rather.
That's fine.
let it grow. But yeah, I see why that's in
But
policy.
$5 million is gonna throw off conservatively, what, 200,000?
Well, it'd be 4%.
Yeah, so it's
You know,
200.
yeah. You know, if the market takes off again, because, you know, unfortunately, we've probably lost money there over the last year. But, you know, again, we also gained money while the stock
Right,
market
right.
was taking off over those years, so, but, you know.
But those are unrealized losses, right?
Yeah,
I learned
still we
that
take it
not
out. You know, but, you know, if interest rates rise,
Tell
we
yourself.
could, you know, we could lock in, you know, a long-term investment for, you know, 7 or 8% or something like that, and look at it in that fashion. So, and then you could start using 4 or 3% to
let's
do
do that.
something.
All right.
You know? So, I mean, so those basically are the assumptions. I mean, and, you know, the purpose of tonight is, you know, are folks relatively in agreement with these numbers, or do they need to be tweaked as we move the process forward?
All right, Paul, I want to say, maybe it's just because I've been reading these, you know, it's probably the 7th year or something. This one was really good. It was really good.
Yeah. So I want to bust that bubble a little bit, tiny bit. I just want to point out 2 things. One is we have a wage and classification study that's about to start. We have funding set aside to implement, potentially after some negotiations, what that looks like for the current fiscal year. But that will have impacts on FY24. But it's too early to predict what that looks like. But it
It's gonna
generally
go
is
up.
not a decrease,
Yeah.
right? Yep. And then the other thing I want to point out, Paul mentioned it briefly regarding the inflation and ancillary costs, but we're also seeing that have a major impact on the capital plan. The $2 million capital plan does not go very far with the price of things right now.
Right,
So
yeah.
don't be too disappointed when you get a capital plan in February or so that has, you know, 4 things on it.
Okay. Paul, I just, you know, you mentioned here about, you know, over our tax mill rate, whatever it is, and then there's an approximate $2.52 added on, right, to the 24.
Right,
Something. Yeah.
the debt exclusion is not part of the.
Yeah, so beyond the debt exclusion, right?
Right.
And so that's handy, and you say that it's going to drop down in 2027,
Yep.
which is about 5 years from now.
Yes.
Which would be, if we move forward with a middle school, that's when.
Timing would be relatively.
The town will be
pretty
facing
good.
an override. Do you think if there is an override, is there any way to estimate how much it will go? Like, now we're paying an additional $252. Do you think it'll go up to $252, or do you think it'll go substantially
I
higher?
think it would probably go beyond 252 by the time you have a new middle, you know, if you're talking, say, one new middle school, you know,
Yeah.
this is hypothetical, one new middle school, $100 million, you know,
Oh, really?
we're at 50% maybe from the state, you know, you're borrowing $50 million. That debt service is going to be more than what we currently have on the high school.
Tom,
Which
we
is
borrowed
dropping off.
$44 million in the high school at 2.2%.
Yeah, something relatively very cheap.
Yeah.
So for a middle school, we're gonna borrow, instead of 44 million, we're probably gonna borrow, I'd guess 55 million at, pick your interest rates. So borrowing more at a higher interest rate, it's gonna be high. It's just the reality.
More than likely go higher than the 252.
Right. Well, the only good thing will be that then all of our schools from primary school all the way to high school
Right.
will be in hopefully top condition, you know, because we've done a lot of refurbishing to the grammar schools.
The elementary
and of course, we have
schools are
a new high
25
school.
years old already
Huh?
now. It was 25 years ago that we redid the elementary schools.
Probably 30 years for a
Probably 30 years ago.
Yeah.
If I win the Powerball tonight, I'll pitch some in.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to end the meeting and tell
Okay,
you
you
get
got-
tickets.
Put that in the
It's on
minutes.
the record.
Yeah. The only thing I can say, Tom, is if you look at it, and if everything filtered nicely into FY '27, you know, yes, you would be talking about the impact for a new middle school might be $2 by itself, but because of the big drop, you know, the public is only going to see half of that. Because of the big drop, that'll absorb some of it.
Yeah.
So,
So,
but there's no way that it'll absorb 100%.
Paul, you spoke of the stormwater utility. Is there any potential difference to the water and sewer utilities based on anything you?
Those are going to go up according to the bottom line budget. Most of that is driven by the Springfield costs, which I don't have a clue as what that would be. So what'll happen there, Mark, is even though the cost will go up, it is not part of this, the revenue is going to go up, so it'll have no effect on the general fund. But I just don't know what those Springfield costs will be. Certainly, we can identify, what the what the salary budget will be relatively, and what the other expenses will be relatively. But the Springfield is the biggest line item in those budgets.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So, like I said, anyway, this is if it gives us a kind of a game plan to move forward with if there's no big objections to any of these numbers. So,
Josh, I think in the past we've adopted by vote the budget calendar. So
Right.
I didn't know if we wanted to go through that at all, but I mean, that looks normal to me.
Pretty normal.
Yeah.
yeah, the budget calendar is relatively. I mean, there's some minor little tweaks in there, but the only thing I think that we've done is have the departmental budgets into Lynn maybe a week earlier than prior years. So, but other than that, the selectmen will get Lynn's budget in the first Monday of March. The big caveat, or the big, I don't say problem, but being it a new governor, they have another 30 days to get the state budget in line. So where you normally had it at the end of January, when you probably went to the MMA meetings, like I said, the new governor has at least 30 more days to do it, so you may not hear anything at the MMA about the
Doesn't matter, they don't
2024.
approve it till August 15th anyway.
Well, the final number, but we've always adjusted the budget numbers at that point in time to reflect the governor's numbers.
Yeah.
So, where I'm saying a 4% increase, that's probably going to hold until March, by the time, the new governor gets in place and proposes whatever, what do you call it, House 1 at the time.
Maybe.
Mark, do you want to move on the calendar?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we adopt the fiscal 2024 budget calendar as proposed.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, unanimous. All right.
I just had a quick question. In terms of the local receipts, when does the board, or does the board take action on looking at just different fees and the structure, and that's something I think we should probably take a look at.
It's in the schedule somewhere.
So you do it twice. You do it fiscal year once. You did those back in June. Might be the meeting right before you get on the
Okay.
board. And then we do the calendar year fees, which is scheduled to come to you at the next meeting.
Okay. And then I guess I could probably look up the local receipts, right, and just see what all the numbers break down to, the fees, structure, and...
Yeah, if you want that information, actually, you know what, in my monthly report that you'll get for the next meeting, or you can go back to the last one,
Yeah.
there's an estimated receipts report. It gives you the breakdown of those estimated receipts with a subtotal. Then it'll also have state aid and property taxes, water, sewer, so on and so forth. But it will give you the different categories of local receipts.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Still there?
All right, thank you, Paul.
Yep, thank you.
Next on the agenda, the quarterly investment report.
All right, I'm moving in Erica Brunel now.
Good evening.
Hi, Erica.
Good evening. I'm here tonight, Erica Brunel, the treasurer for the town, respectfully submitting my quarterly report for the status of the town's cash and investments for the period ending September 30th, 2022. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. I know I've had some issues with my laptop in the past, so I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, so as per the town's investment policy, the town has no long-term investments that exceeded the 5-year limit. The individual bank balances were under the $20 million bank provision. All banks received the highest safety rating of green for Veribank, and all accounts are fully insured and secured. Closing the first quarter of fiscal year 23, we have seen interest rates continue to rebound. Most noteworthy was People's Bank, who is offering an interest rate of 2.47 on our daily depository account. That's up from 1.15 at the end of last quarter. Also noteworthy is Newburyport Bank at 1.25%, and that's an increase from 0.10% last quarter. Amy, the assistant treasurer, and I constantly monitor the accounts, and we're moving money to make sure that we're utilizing and taking advantage of those interest rates that are higher at some instances. The OPEB investment fund began to rebound in July with a profit of approximately $183,000. But by August, the volatile market again took hold, and we lost approximately $160,000 in August and approximately $288,000 in September. The net loss for the quarter was approximately $265,000, and the balance at the end of September was approximately $5.3 million. I just wanted to note on here that People's United Bank officially was taken over by M&T Bank, so you'll see on the reports, I did notice I missed in a couple spots, but you'll see People's United is changing to M&T. And just lastly, we're going to continue to obviously check the interest rates and take advantage of the best interest rates and diversify our funds to make sure that we're in compliance with not only the policy, but Massachusetts state laws and regulations.
All right, any questions from the board?
Yeah. Erica, this is Mark Gold. How often do you review the interest rates to move money between? I mean, things are pretty volatile with the Fed meeting every couple of weeks now. How often do you actually do that?
Amy and I are in the accounts every day, to be completely honest with you. So I check the interest rates, particularly at People's United Bank, where we have a great deal of our funds in that daily depository account. Thankfully, it has been the highest interest rate, so we haven't had to do as much movement as we have in the past, but we do monitor it, and if we do see others that are increasing, we have been moving funds. Newburyport Bank has been great with that because their rate went up quite a bit, so we were able to put more of our funds in that account.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much, Erica.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.
Yep.
Thank
You
you.
as well. I have a one-day liquor license from the LACCF for a November 17th International Dinner Greek.
Okay, I'll move that we approve this one-day liquor license for the Long Meadow Adult Center Community Fund for an event on 11/17/22, International Dinner for Greeks. Wow, people like to taste Greek food, which is everybody.
Second.
All right, any discussion? And all those in favor? Next up on the agenda, we have the updated composition of the Energy and Sustainability Commission. Andrea emailed me today to ask us to table this until the committee is able to discuss Lynn's proposed comments. I am fine with that, unless anyone thinks otherwise.
Lynn, your proposed, is there something we can just look at, or you can send along to us too, whatever your...
Oh, it's here, we have it.
Those were your comments, or those were, who proposed this revision?
I did. That was based on a question came in about membership on the energy sustainability. So I started looking at the policy book that's online. It's from June of 2016, the Select Board policy on the energy sustainability. It did not match another document we had in the office. So in further review, there was a modification of the energy and sustainability charge in June of 18 that never got included in the Select Board Town Manager policy book. Both of those still, to me, were not clear enough. So I made a suggested revision that is in front of you tonight. Just all I was looking to do is have you have a discussion about it and bring it back at a
Well-
later date anyway.
Okay, so,
These were just my suggestions. You guys can do whatever you want. You could change it up any way you want, but I do believe it does need to be looked at.
well, what I really focused on, because I know the issue was the committee composition, and whether, who's voting, who's not, who's just a liaison. And I think what you did makes it crystal clear what the issue is, or how it should be handled going forward. But I think what the committee wanted to do is change or give us suggestions on the role of the committee on the chart.
We did make recommendations there as well.
Right, I think that's what they want to look at. So, if we're not voting tonight anyway, I think that we can discuss the composition.
Chart changes aren't there.
So it's 5 members and 1 member, 5 we appoint, 1 member from recycling, 1 from the permanent building committee, and then school planning and select board each have a non-voting liaison. So they can attend the meetings, but they don't vote. And everyone's a 3-year term. I think that's not what it said before. It was a little less clear. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
See, I had a version that was very similar to what you now have, Lynn. I don't know, because you're right, there were multiple versions, and one just didn't get updated, but I went back to my Wayback Machine, and it had the version that we voted on just a few years ago that apparently didn't make it to the...
Right.
So the membership, I'm fine with the membership. My comments are the role of the committee, which I had a bunch of comments about.
The only comment I had is, because I had mentioned in a previous version of this too, is in the last paragraph, it says, stay informed regarding climate and energy-related best practices. I would say initiatives and research relevant to municipalities participating in the state. Just because if they do come across research, it would be nice for them to share research findings that would influence our community in some way. That would be the only addition I would make. The rest of it reads well.
Well, do you want to talk about what your comments now? Or we can wait
Yeah,
until-
no, I just assume give them to Lynn if we're going to have them go
Yeah,
back to them.
let's
So,
do that, and then we can send them to the committee so they can discuss.
I mean, I saw 5 new items, and then 2 were removed relative to what I had, 5 new bullet items.
And I apologize, I don't know why the track changes didn't come through. I had
Came from
prepared it
mine.
that way.
Well, you sent
have
us the
it?
Word document.
Yeah.
Is that the old
Yeah,
one?
so I sent them
No, this is the Word
document, and then I
Oh.
also uploaded that same document to the agenda.
Oh,
and
but
it
when
did
you
say
convert
about-
it to a PDF.
Yeah, it was,
didn't.
but
Okay.
I'm looking at the Word
Can you
document.
print to a PDF and show with the comments, markup?
I mean, if you want to, I can.
So what
text
happens
it.
is when I upload it to the website, I convert it to a PDF within the website, so it changes there. I could do it beforehand too, that works, but typically
Oh,
sometimes
Well,
when
if
we
you print
convert.
to a PDF and keep the markup in, then we can see it. Because
Yep.
I know we keep having weird stuff when it
Yes.
goes to the website.
So the document that I attached when I sent the updated supporting documents, that was the document that I uploaded to the agenda. It just didn't save the track changes when converting to a PDF
Right.
through the website.
We're going to try something else. I'm going to
Yeah.
talk to you
Yeah.
about it later.
Yeah, not to bog it down, the reason you convert it to a PDF when you upload it, like within the website, is it makes it searchable. It's a functionality with Civic Plus. So, if
Oh.
but we can do it
Well,
that
they
way.
should fix that
Yes,
functionality.
we can
because
do
it's
it that
really-
way.
It's really, I think we miss a lot.
We absolutely,
that.
because I have a hard time following this,
Yeah.
knowing what I changed and.
I could pull up the other one.
Yeah. Well, so looking at what you've got up there, the first one, second one, and third one are new relative to what I had, or new bullets. And I guess I was trying to understand this, the second one, investigate alternate energy technologies. Because without the context of why we're having them investigate alternate technologies, one of the problems I personally have with the committee is that they sometimes come in odds with our DPW building maintenance and other maintenance programs, and I hate to see them running out front working on things that we don't have staff or whatever supporting, and I think that's also part of that next bullet, which is identify funding opportunities to help town achieve energy and sustainability related goals. I guess if they come up with funding opportunities, that may be.
I thought that was struck through on the red line I got.
See, not on the one I had. Anyway.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, monitor grants and
Monitoring
contracts. was
green
struck.
communities grants and contracts was struck through.
Is that struck because that's Corinne?
Again, they don't do it. It's not a, so some of what is being recommended here is based on the last 3 years of them working and meeting. They don't monitor the green community
Okay.
grant or contract. They were originally, but then the whole opportunities for energy and sustainability initiatives really grew past green communities. So that's just such a narrow thing to.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, when we started, the scope of this committee was very narrow when it started, and you know, there's been scope creep over the years beyond energy. The sustainability seems to be taking more of their effort, and they get into issues of sustainability, which may be valuable to the town, but not necessarily valuable in terms of the advice that they should have to the select board. And that's one thing that it said,
No.
even the first sentence, it said, the Long Meadow Energy and Sustainability is established to provide advise. I think it should be to advise the select board, not to provide advice. And it also, you know, the last sentence of the committee composition, it's been around, so we go through this all the time. We don't need a transition appointments, where it says the initial transition appointments as follows. Lynn, down at the bottom, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year.
Right.
That doesn't need to be
Right.
there either. Generally, we strike those when we go through these again. But I just want to try to prevent growing scope creep for a committee whose goal is to advise the select board and not to implement policy on their own.
It doesn't work for me because I don't have
Yeah.
Microsoft.
And I personally sit on this committee, and I go to all the meetings, so.
You don't sit on the committee.
I'm a liaison on the committee, let me say. But what had transpired was the committee had felt that I was should be a voting member, and I said, I'm here as a liaison.
Thank you.
To hear your advice to the board, and I can bring it back, and so I think there was some previous board members that were on this committee that were voting, so there had been some confusion, and Lynn dug up some more documentation to, I guess, make the fix, so.
I mean, I'm liaison on the recycling committee, and I make sure I don't vote. That's
Right.
A couple other things.
Right. But I mean, for the EV charging stations and the rates, that's where I said you could be a good advisement to the select board on this issue, so. But
Well, why don't we, if anyone has comments, we can send them to Lynn to send to the committee. She can gather them all up, and they have a meeting next month, so, and then we can address it again after that.
Fine.
yeah, I agree.
Okay. Next on the agenda, the Holiday Trash Amnesty 2022. So this is for the
This is your standard.
December 26th through January 6th.
Yeah, I think we do this every year, and I think it's the right thing to do. I'll make a motion. We extend a holiday trash amnesty. By that I mean allow for a second bag of trash during the period of time of December, what is it?
26th through January.
December 26th through January 6th of, December 26th, 2022 through January 6th, 2023, for one extra bag per household.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor? Great, and then last up on the agenda tonight, we have correspondence. I don't think I emailed him, but I wanted to address it. Jonathan Mosley asked us about, there was some work on Long Meadow Street during rush hour, and it seemed to be utility work. Was that planned utility work, or was it unexpected? I'm not sure if you, this was on November 2nd.
This may have been the water main cleaning that they were doing. I don't have the.
No, this wasn't us, this was an outside utility.
Yeah, because the water main cleans, I haven't seen them a lot, but it doesn't seem to direct traffic. There was some sort of police escort.
Yeah, I know that the water main had a police escort. I'm not aware of what this individual is asking about.
Okay, I can. Maybe we can follow
Josh,
up with DPW.
I was also going to say something about that. I think, Lynn, if we can just make the DPW aware, and I know, because I sent him a note back, and said Dan also sent him a note back independently, I guess.
Oh, Mr. Mosley?
Mr. Mosley, a note back. But one of the things that, we'd like to do is and his note didn't tell us, didn't give me all the details, but my sense was they were opening the road. And if they open the road, they get a road cut permit from the DPW. And I'd love to just let the DPW know that rather than just hand these things out like whoever walks and gets them, at least ask, we're trying not to have, sometimes they say, look, we'd like to get our crew going at 7 o'clock in the morning. Route 5 is busy for 2 half-hour periods of time during the day. We ought to be able to, say to them, you want to open our road, please don't do it before, 9 o'clock in the morning, or don't do it after 3:30 in the afternoon, or something like that. That was my sense. But but I don't know that there was a road opening permit. That was the implication from his letter. And so my request would be that we just let the DPW, who we have mostly new people down there, understand that we do have the right to manage those road opening permits. And we ought to want, if they're doing Avondale Road, which is where I live, you can do it anytime you want to, and then you get no traffic. But we got 2 or 3 streets in and out of town that we need.
Well, then maybe this could fit into a future initiative you have in the works.
Yeah, I know that they do limit it on Long Meadow Street specifically, because even the police department details won't schedule details depending on the time of day in the street.
Yeah.
But there's not enough information in
He
this
did
to
say
know.
there was a police officer there, but I don't know if it was a Long Meadow, you're right, there wasn't a lot, and I'm not trying to jump to any conclusions, just.
Okay.
Well, they're also cleaning the leaves out of the sewers, too. They were
Yeah,
doing
and there's a
that.
police escort for that, but that
Yeah.
is so on the side. That doesn't really affect things, at least at school commute time.
Yeah.
Luckily, but yeah, they've done a good job with not really affecting things.
I can, I'll follow up on this. Some of the other thing that's happening too is we're nearing the end of the construction season, and our contracts are expiring, and these contractors are held to dates. And if they go over those dates, there's financial consequences, and we have to get creative with them to make sure we get this work done before we're past, generally it's November 15th, so.
Okay.
Well, just one more thing. There's a seminar tomorrow on a new law that's going to come out on November 6th, November 9th on cannabis and communities. And so I'll go online, so I won't have to turn down any free samples. We'll be okay.
The other thing I was just going to mention, because it was in correspondence, Mr. Shea spoke about it here during citizens' comments. I spent a lot of time today trying to read through this DEP proposal, and frankly, because it was very difficult to understand, I could only read the summary, which he also sent us the summary of what it does. It sounds like, to me, the City of Springfield Water and Sewer Department, who, by the way, if you read what was in our packet here, did an outstanding job of responding to why this seems to be an unnecessary proposal, as well as the Mass Municipal Water Works Association, I think it was, responded. But I think the question is, should the town of Long Meadow have expected to have gotten this some other route? Did we get it some other route?
We did.
And should it have been made known to us as the Water and Sewer Commissioners? I'm not sure I would have known enough to write anything about it, but
That was one of my questions. Is that even in our purview as water and sewer commissioners? I don't know, because we're charged with making sure there's enough water, and I would say this would be the opposite of that. It's quality and availability. You know, I'm not sure. It's a question.
neither am I. I mean, like I said, I think, you know, Mr. Shea called me, he said, will you oppose this? I said, we don't need to, in my opinion. The city of Springfield's doing a great job in opposing it. The MMWA is doing a great job in opposing it, and I'm not sure we have a lot of standing other than to say the town of Longmeadow opposes it too, but, you know, we're a secondary or tertiary user, but I think we should have been aware that this was going on, because it could have been, or in some other instance, and I don't know where this comes. I just get the sense that we're still understanding in the DPW, you know, when something comes in, what's kind of internal, what's external, what goes to the select board and what doesn't. I just ask that we err on the side of over-communicating instead of under-communicating, so that if it's something that we think we should or just feel good about responding to, about we will. And I don't know if anybody, you know, I know Mr. Shea is very passionate about this and believes that there's some issues, and I think that from what I read, so does the city of Springfield Water Department. They feel pretty passionate that this has nothing to do with them, and folks in DEP are overstepping their bounds. So
If I'd had a year to learn about this, maybe when I first gave us notice, I don't know if it would have changed my mind, because it would have been nice to have heard. But, yeah, and so I agree with Mark. I know there's a lot of changes going on at DPW, and when in doubt, let us know.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else? All right.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Good night, everybody.